Hello and welcome to Mental Health Awareness Week, Day 6. Today we're talking about education, and it really is a topic quite close to my heart. As you'll notice throughout this series, there has been a common thread and theme, and that is one of education. When I had my incident up in Newcastle, I really struggled to understand what sectioning was and why this whole element of I couldn't leave the hospital. Just those three words, you can't leave. Now, I'm not saying I would have suddenly been enlightened, and I know I certainly couldn't be reasoned with at that time, but I'm just saying if I had a foundation, a slight understanding of sectioning and what was actually happening to me, instead of just saying you can't leave, then maybe I wouldn't have had such a traumatic experience when it came to being taken to the Sunderland Institute and thinking I was some sort of stem cell or science experiment. There was also an element of confusion and lack of education from my friends and family's point of view. You'll notice they said some things about not knowing who to turn to, not knowing how to react around me, and also if they needed any help, who could they turn to? Now, a lot of the mental health professionals I dealt with when I was up in Newcastle used this term insight and said, yeah, Dan, you've got great insight about it. And that was only because I did psychology at A level. And that was a really base foundation that just told me about neurotransmitters and imbalances. If someone didn't even have that base foundation, then it would have been even more confusing and not really knowing what's going on with them or why it happened to them specifically. Back last year, I went to give a talk on mental health at a local sixth form. Marling School is based in Stroud, and they invited me down late last year to give a little talk and a little rundown about certain elements that I went through. Now, before I got into the talk, I opened up the floor to the students and just said, please raise your hands if you've ever heard of sectioning. Now, in a room of 120 students from 16 to 18, only 5 people put their hand up. And that's not saying those 5 people knew comprehensively what sectioning was, that was just that they heard of it. And now imagine all of those students are then going to go off to university, essentially a boiling pot, a pressure cooker of potential mental health issues, and going in it with no understanding about what sectioning is at all. Things like that just really quite terrify me, honestly. And so I'm not saying I have a simple solution here. It's if we could roll out into the curriculum in schools and potentially even into workplaces an element of a base foundation of mental health. And so that would look similar to that of sex education, something that just came out, not every week or even every month, just something that comes in installments, something that gives that foundation level, that baseline, to help people understand, first of all, what mental health is, the different elements of mental health, and also potentially if someone was going through mental health issues, what that would mean for them. If we could roll this out into curriculums and workplaces and schools around the country, then this would naturally not only open the conversation, also spread awareness, but equally would bring down the element of stigma. When someone understands what's going on with you, suddenly it's not just a presumption or prejudice. With understanding just comes clarity. There is an element that I'd even like to see it rolled out into workplaces. I think mental health is used quite like a blanket term almost. Like, oh yeah, no, we deal with mental health, and that's like, yep, box ticks. I just don't think that's enough anymore. When my mum was at work, she had special designated employees that had gone on mental health training, and she found it specifically interesting. I'm going to pass over to my mum now, who wants to provide a brief insight in terms of parental education and trying to bring awareness to the fact that she felt that there was no education for her demographic.
Hi, you've met me over the last few days on various videos of Dan's, and because today is all about education, I felt that as well as the education from the children and young person's perspective, it's also important, very important, to look at education in mental health from a parental perspective. I really didn't know a great deal about anything until Dan was ill, and it made me very aware through everything that Dan went through of the lack of knowledge that was out there. I didn't even know, for example, that there was something as amazing as the GRIP team in Gloucestershire to help people. Just something as basic as that. I certainly didn't know where I could go to get any help. As for looking out for warning signs, didn't have a clue. Having talked with various educational professionals, both in the university and in schools, it seems to be that there is a fundamental lack of mental health awareness in these schools. A lot of these educationalists, they are tutors, experts in their field, and within that tutorial role is very much pastoral, and they don't really know what to do about mental health. They certainly don't have training courses or anything like that. I know that a lot of the big companies and smaller companies nowadays are in fact offering training and advocating training in mental health for various people. But when in general conversation with educational professionals and I mention this, they're astounded because nothing like that appears to be on offer for them. Now, I'm not saying that's blanket across all universities or all schools, because I know that some schools and some universities are doing an amazing job, but I do feel that mental health awareness and education should be a standard, and parents need it We're all given all the insight into sex education for our children, but quite honestly, mental health is every bit as important, if not more so. We really need to do something to make sure that this is available to all. If governments and educational bodies feel that the investment in mental health education was too expensive, do they really think that the cost of ignorance is worth it? We've all seen what it can do.
Thanks very much, Mum, for providing that insight. I think the key thing is here, mental health shouldn't be something that is educated after the fact. It's something that people should know about before the fact, so that then when they enter the incidents they have that base understanding and it's not so much of a shock. I would also like to say there are some fantastic schools out there doing some amazing work around mental health and mental health awareness. I just want to see it be more from a government level implemented into the curriculum, something strict. And I think I would just like to say a huge shout out to those that are championing and pioneering mental health in schools. People like Mandy Johnson, so I've seen some loads of stuff go out from her. But yeah, those teachers that are really putting in the graft when it comes to mental health, fantastic, you're doing an amazing job. Thank you guys for joining me for day 6. It's been a really tricky one to make actually, and I've done so many takes on this one, it's unbelievable, and I don't know why. I think it's getting to day 6 and I am just really exhausted, I'm not going to lie to you. And I'm hoping as awareness grows, so do people's thought towards installing these elements of infrastructure so that people are more educated about mental health, but also know how to deal with it better when it comes around. Forgot to mention, if there are any other schools or sixth forms that are in the locality or even potentially a bit further afield, I'm more than happy to come into the schools and give a talk, much like I did with Marling. The kids seem to really engage with it, but left up to you, please do get in contact if you do fancy it. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you guys tomorrow.